And we hear this third part of the book of Esther, which is the most exciting part. She finally tells about the evil Haman. But one of the things that drove me bonkers, I was born without patience.
Yes.
I was absent the day God gave that gift. And so every time I read Esther, I get so excited that Haman is finally going to be
Get
revealed.
his comeuppance.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she's, out of all the things she could ask for, the king says, you can have half my kingdom. You're going to have all this stuff. And she says,
I want a banquet.
how anticlimactic is that? It's awful.
I know.
And she doesn't do it once.
She does it twice.
It's horrible
Yeah.
for someone that doesn't have patience.
I know. But she's got her entire community with her.
Yeah.
So I think that helps.
Yeah, because she
think that
spent that
helps.
time fasting and
Yes.
praying. And I love that she did it with not only Mordecai, but the entire Jewish people and her maids
Yes.
in the temple,
Yes.
which makes me wonder if she didn't share her faith with them.
Right.
And possibly they let go of all of their Persian gods, probably plural, and started believing in the God of Abraham, the one God of Abraham.
Right. At the very least,
That happens. I can edit that out.
okay. I'll just slip it in my pocket here.
All right.
At the very least, they are certainly open to Esther's faith.
Yeah.
Yes.
And listening to her.
And listening to her and supporting her on this journey as she tries to save her people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's not that faith that she has in that time of prayer and fasting that helped her to understand the best time to reveal Haman.
Right.
Because she obviously doesn't do it the first time
Right.
or the second time. And
Right.
I, having no patience and often thinking that I know better than God,
Don't we all?
wouldn't
No.
I would have been like, do you know what Haman did?
Right.
But she asked for the banquet and then asked for the banquet.
Uh-huh.
And then finally when the king said, I'll give you anything you want. You're my favorite. You're so beautiful. She says, my life is in danger.
My life and my people's lives
Yes.
are in danger. Yes.
So it's almost like the king's going,
What? How did that happen?
yeah, you mean the world to me, and you're telling me that your life is in danger.
Right.
And that your people's life are in danger, and so well, he didn't know she was Jewish yet,
Right.
so perhaps he thought the Persian people.
Right.
So he's sitting here thinking, what? I need to do something. What's happening?
Right.
And she finally reveals to him. But she starts by saying, there's an enemy
Right.
that is enslaving me
Right.
and my people.
Right.
And I love that she says, there's an enemy.
Yeah.
Because I would have said, it's Haman. He's doing it.
Right. Which would be not effective at all
Right.
because Haman has been really persuasive
And is the chief advisor.
and is the chief advisor to the king.
It
Exactly.
would have made the king look bad.
Exactly. But Esther has really done her research.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
She's
she has.
very knowledgeable. She's very wise.
It's almost like she's setting up a chessboard.
Right.
And she's saying, my life is in danger. My people's life are in danger. There's an enemy who is trying to enslave me. And I was reading a commentary. I know we both read the commentary that talked about the Hebrew word for destroy and the Hebrew word for enslave. Because when Haman first talked about wanting to destroy the Jewish people, he went to the king and he said, I want to destroy. But the Hebrew word for destroy and the Hebrew word for enslave sound very, very similar. So perhaps, and I agree, and I know because Sarah and I have talked, she does too, that the king most likely thought that Haman was asking for the Hebrew people to be enslaved
Especially because Haman then said, I'm willing to pay you this much money.
Yeah, I'm willing to buy them
Right.
from you.
Right.
And the king says, don't worry about it, because they're going to be enslaved to the Persian people, whom then we are going to tax, so
Right.
we'll get that money.
We'll get the money.
So
Right.
you don't have to do it. We'll get it anyway, because
Right.
these people are going to be enslaved.
Right.
So Haman allowed the king to make that leap.
Right.
And the king then gave him his signet ring and said, go ahead and do it and make the decree. And Haman added destroy, kill, and annihilate. In case people didn't know, enslavement, destroy. We're going this way. The king thinks this way, but we're going this way.
Right. All on one day.
So how would Esther confront that without making the king feel, for lack of a better word, dumb?
Right. Well, the first thing is to make him feel important. Right?
Yes. But is that, do you think, because we've talked,
Right.
is that her manipulating the king by saying, oh, great and wonderful king who's so wise, or is it her being smart?
I think it's easy to read Esther and think, oh, she's so manipulative.
Yeah.
But then I think that if she were a man, we wouldn't feel that way.
No. It's tempting when we see a woman who is wise and brilliant and cunning and setting up her chess pieces in a way that we can hear what she has to say, which
Right.
often women's voices are seen as less important. So women, when they strive to be heard, are seen as manipulative.
Correct.
Often men who do the same thing are wise.
Right.
So I'm with you.
Yes.
I think Esther is wise, knowing
Right.
that if she points it out too early, the king's going to think she's calling him dumb.
Right.
She's just a hysterical woman who's angry at Haman.
Right.
So I think she's smart to set it up the way she did.
Right. And the way she did is to say, I want to invite you to this banquet. And oh, by the way, let's have Haman come too.
As an afterthought.
As an afterthought.
Because she couldn't invite the king and Haman and make them equals.
No.
So is she manipulating the king by saying, oh, great king, please come to my banquet, I'd be so honored, and you can invite Haman?
Right.
Or is
she
she setting the scene?
Setting the scene. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because if she would have confronted the king earlier, perhaps he would have said, Haman and I need to have a conversation about this.
Right.
And then she wouldn't be in the room.
No.
Okay, and this is the moment where I go to Hamilton and that song, In the Room Where It Happened.
I want to be in the room where it happens.
Because
yes.
you want to be in the room where it happened.
You do.
And Esther wanted to be in the room. She wanted a voice. She
Right.
wanted to hear what Haman was going to say.
Correct.
She wanted to be able to put her thoughts forward.
Right. And she knew that if they were all three in the room together, Haman wasn't going to be able to cut her out of the conversation. He wasn't going to be able to just triangulate things and say, well, you know that Esther, she's just crazy and manipulative. And she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think she was brilliant to set it up the way she did. And then to say, there's an enemy who wants to destroy, kill, and annihilate. Because that's the exact same words that Haman used in the decree.
Yes.
So I wonder if she's not using those words, number one, to tell the king what Haman really meant.
Right.
But number two, to tell Haman, I've read it.
I know what you're up to.
I've read it, and I know what's going on. She's so brilliant.
Yes, she is.
So she used her faith, she used her patience, and she used her wisdom, which is a gift from God.
Right.
I love in the Hebrew scriptures, Sophia. God is often called Sophia, which is wisdom, because God gives us God's holy wisdom.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what God did for Esther.
Right.
Because it would be so easy for like me, Haman did it.
Right.
But instead, Esther used that divine wisdom and worked with God
Right.
to bring about the climax of the story, this truth. And the fact that the king heard it.
Right. And was like, I have to take a moment. I need to step out. I need to process what I just heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that he listened
It's huge.
is huge.
And then I find it interesting that Haman, in that moment, I expected him to run after the king.
Yeah.
And say, let me tell you my side.
Mm-hmm.
But he saw how angry the king was, and he also understood which one he most needed to talk to at that moment. And it wasn't the king, it was Esther.
No. He knew where there's a perception of power, and there's where the power really is. And he recognized in that moment where the power really was in that room. And the power really was with Esther.
Which is brilliant. That
Yes.
it was so palpable.
Yes.
That Haman was able to see it.
Yes.
And then I know it's kind of creepy to think about it, but maybe it was also a God moment. That the king was in the garden going, Haman's my chief advisor. What's it going to look like if he lied to me and manipulated me and all this that Esther's saying? But the other side is, he's my chief advisor. Like, I can't go against him. And so he comes back in, and I wonder if it was a God moment that Haman didn't choose to lay himself down in front of her on the floor and bow down before her or what. Out of all the things he could have done, he chose to lay down on the couch with her and beg her forgiveness.
Right.
Which looked really bad.
It reminds me of that moment when Joseph is in the major domo's household. The Pharaoh's kind of the leader of his house, and Joseph is kind of his head servant, head slave, and the man's wife has been trying to get Joseph into bed for a long time, and Joseph has been denying that. And one day she reaches out and just grabs a hold of his clothes, and he's trying to get away, and he takes off running and leaves his clothes behind. And the major domo sees that and accuses Joseph of really nefarious things. And that's how Joseph ends up in prison, where he starts interpreting dreams, and then he comes to the Pharaoh's attention, and then that's how eventually Israel is saved from the famine. That's how God works in that instance. And that's kind of what this situation reminds me of a little bit. It's like God kind of harkens, I've done this before.
Yeah.
Maybe we can try this strategy again.
Because it's definitely what set the king over the edge.
Yes.
To say,
Yes.
all right, we're going to kill Haman.
Yep.
Which seems horrible.
Right.
Because in my Christian mind, I want Haman to have that opportunity of repentance, restoration, and redemption.
Right.
But I think it's really important when we read stories in the Hebrew scriptures that we remember they're written at a different time, in a different place, and at a time when the people understood God in a different way. It's not wrong. At that time, the Hebrew people had a ton of enemies and were constantly having people come and killing them and taking their land and taking their resources and their animals. And that was all they had. I mean, if an enemy came in and took everything, like, your life was over. And so they were constantly being reminded of that covenant that God made with them, that God would never turn God's back on them. So last week, Sarah talked about Haman being the equivalent of the Amalekites, who are the enemies of Israel and the Hebrew people. And then we have Mordecai, who's a descendant of King Saul, and from the tribe of Benjamin. So he represents the Hebrew people. So we have the Hebrew people and we have the Amalekites. The Amalekites are not going to win, because what does that say about God?
Right, exactly.
What does that say about the covenant?
Exactly.
So it's not, we can't put our Christian theme of Jesus' grace and restoration and healing and all that stuff, which is great, but we haven't yet understood God in such that way. We're still back here
Correct.
trying to understand God always being with us, always walking
Right.
with us,
Right.
and always saving us,
Right.
not always in the way we want.
Right.
Because I love how Mordecai said last week, if you choose not to speak, Esther, our people are still going to be liberated and vindicated. It's not like if you don't speak, the Jewish people are going to die out.
Right.
God's still going to be with us.
Right.
However, I'm going to die, you're going to die, our family is going to die, our people in Persia are going to die. But God will remain and will stay true to our people. And
Right.
that goes through to Haman and his horrific death.
Right. Right.
But that just shows the Israelite people through this story and us that God will always be with us.
Always be with us.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the theme that we can carry through. It's not this question of revenge,
Yeah.
right? Because that's so we can overinterpret or underinterpret this, and we can take too much from this story and say, well, God wants us to wreak vengeance on our enemies.
Right.
Or we can impose ourselves too much on this story and say, well, Esther and Malachi should not have done what they did because then all these people died and it was not a good thing.
Right.
Both of those, I think, are incorrect interpretations. One of them puts too much, tries to impose Christianity on
Yes. A Jewish
inappropriately
story. Yes.
on a Jewish story. And the other one, I think, takes Christianity and turns it into something that it is not,
Yes.
which is this vengeful, really horrible thing.
Right. Where our enemies are always
Right,
these horrible people that should die.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think what we can take from this is God is always with us.
Yes.
And how do we, no matter what it is that we're encountering in life, how do we rely on that? And how do we rely on our communities? And how do we draw strength from that? And even when we don't see what the way forward is, even when we want to be, Haman did it, how do we find patience?
Yes.
How do we wait?
In spending that time in fasting and in prayer
Yes.
to say, okay, God, how do I do this? How do I help someone to hear what I'm feeling and what I'm trying to say without them feeling dumb,
Right.
without them feeling small, wrong, so that the king could hear what Esther was saying in a way that would help him to see truth and to bring about justice, which we'll see next week when
Yes.
Esther begs the king to change the decree. And we get to learn about the Jewish festival of Purim. So we invite you to come back one more week as we wrap up Esther in each other's churches. Sarah will go back to All Saints, and I'll stay here at First Lutheran.